For Durer, we're going to be doing printmaking, and just like his famous rhinoceros print, we'll be using animal images for our imagery. On the website, you'll find the lesson plan that has different animal images in that lesson plan. For younger students, you can do something simpler like line drawings like this that don't require any additional texture. You can also do the slightly more complicated ones like this, where the students could add feathers and things like that, and fur texture in the bear. And then the most complicated line drawings would be the rabbit and the rhinoceros. And again, you would be able to have the students add texture within the rabbit, like fur and softness to that, and then also bumps and other rough things on the rhinoceros. When you look at this, you can see that there's outlines along the image. That's because it is already 4 by 6, so if you cut it exactly on those lines, you're going to have images that correspond to a pre-cut 4 by 6 styrofoam printing plate. And on the blog, you'll see a link to buying a large, like class size pack of these, and those are just already cut and ready to go. One problem is that this one I got in the package, it came in this kind of like bent shape. So during carving and printing it, that was a bit of an issue with getting ink in places I didn't want it to go. So if you do buy these pre-cut pieces and they're curved, then go ahead and lay them flat under a heavy stack of books for a few days and see if that won't help flatten them out, so it's easier for the students to carve and much, much easier for the actual inking process. In addition to these pre-cut sheets, there are larger sheets like this of the foam that come in flat packages, and then you can just cut them yourself into 4 by 6 inch rectangles. Each student will get one of these foam printing plates that's 4 by 6, and you will have them choose an animal image and tape that paper onto the top of that printing plate. To begin, you're going to have them use a brightly colored pencil, and that's because as they first outline this shape, it allows them to much more easily see where they've already began to outline and what they have yet to outline. If we use regular pencil, then they probably won't be able to see which areas they have missed. So I'm going to begin by outlining the penguin, and I have to go really, really slowly and press pretty firmly because I want to leave this image pressed into the plate below. I had my 6-year-old daughter practice this, and because she was pressing so hard, she tended to press and then pull and make extra lines. So don't have them press so hard that they're just like going crazy on it, but it doesn't have to be, it does have to be firm enough that they can see the depressed image after they remove the paper. So I guess a balance of firm, but not so hard that they can't control what their pencil is doing. So you can see, because I'm using this reddish color, I can see what areas I've done and which areas I haven't done. And I'm just going to follow all of these lines along like that. I want to make sure I'm getting all the interior lines as well as all of the exterior lines, and then any details such as this eye right there. So for the youngest kids, they would simply do the outline, and actually for all the kids, this is what we start with. We do the outline and we remove the paper. And if you can kind of see that you have an outline pressed in like that. You also want to go back now and have the students go in and press into the plate a second time without the paper on it, so that we get a nice deep impression, and the ink will not go into this if it's deep enough. And we want that. We want to have no ink wherever we press, so that these lines will remain white when we print them. So I'll go through and do that. And again, this colored pencil helps me see what I've done and what I haven't. quite done yet. So if you wanted the young kids to stop there, you could have them stop there, or you could give them some sort of additional tool like a dull stick like this, or some sort of toothpick or skewer, or even just using the colored pencil again. And they could add other things going on around it. Maybe some snowflakes. Or they could just leave it as is. Sometimes kids get a little bit crazy and do too much going on, so you can keep it really simple with just the animal, or allow them to do a little bit extra design. It's whatever you choose. I'm going to do a second example, and I'm going to do the owl, which is going to allow us to do some more texture and design work within the animal. So the same process, I begin with a colored pencil and outline the different lines. And you can see that these line drawings are a little bit more complicated than the penguin and the turtle. And so it's good for ages 7, 8, 9, and on up. And of course, any of these images can be used for any age, just depending on the ability of your students and if they need something simpler or more complicated based on what you know of your class. And I don't need to do all of these little lines. That's simply to show the students what texture could look like. So they could follow them, or they could just leave that blank. Again, step 2 is to remove the paper, and we have the image that we can see on there. Go back with your pencil, press into it where we have those lines. Using a pencil leaves a very, very thick line, and using a skewer will leave a much thinner line. So I'll do the body with the pencil, but now I'll take my toothpick or skewer, and I can do some of the other details much, much thinner. So I'll do the eye with a thinner line and the beak. So the students can have a variety of these tools to get a variety of size of line. Also do the legs with a smaller one. And just about done. And now is the part where we get to add texture. So when I look at the owl, I can do some texture on the wings. I can do some sort of curved lines and talk about oils. With curves and angles and all that stuff. So I can go in and just press in different lines and shapes into some areas. Because I use a skewer, that's going to be nice and thin detail. If I used either this thicker stick or a pencil, I'm going to get thicker detail. So I'll show you an example here in the front area of the owl. And then when I print it, you'll be able to see the difference of what the different tools do when I add those details. Once you have the animals impressed into your foam plate, then it's time to print them. So if you wanted to have each class have printmaking materials such as a brayer and some sort of paint or ink, you could definitely do that. If you wanted to save some money by not buying as many of these supplies, you can have the students do their foam plate in class, but then bring their foam plates to a central area at the campus and just have a few of these materials there with a few moms helping print them. And that way you would only have to buy, let's say, 2 brayers and some ink and things like that rather than a set for each class. I'm going to be showing you the 2 different options here. One option is to use tempera paint to print your image. So I'm going to put some just onto some sort of flat surface like a plate, and then I'm going to use my brayer to ink it like that. Just kind of like when you are painting a wall, you would take your roller and go back and forth and make sure you have your paint on the whole surface, just like that. And then I have something down on the table, because if you don't have newspaper or something down, you're going to get ink on the table as you roll this. So have one of the parents take the printing plate of the student and ink it for them. I would not suggest letting the younger students at least, do this part. So now we have the tempera paint on the printing plate, and I have a piece of paper that is larger than the printing plate, so the students or the mom can help them put that down on top, and then take a rolling pin and roll this so that you have a nice even contact between the paper and the ink. If you just use your hands, it's not going to be quite as consistent. And then you would simply remove your printing plate, and you have the image where the ink was now pressed onto the paper. And each student could do their image several times to get the idea that printmaking allows us to use one image that we draw once, but print it very, very quickly again and again. Another option is to use a special block printing ink. And this is what I would suggest. It's much, much thicker, and I just think it gives a more consistent and even and darker color, which shows up quite a bit more nicely. So it's the same idea. I take a brayer and ink it in my tray or whatever surface you have. Make sure it's nicely coated. Go ahead and either have the parent or the student ink their printing plate. And this is where, if you have a curved styrofoam plate, you get into trouble, because if it's curved up and you get ink on places where you don't want it, then you're going to have a print that isn't quite as sharp and doesn't have as nice clean lines. So the more flat you can get your plate, the better. I'll set down my paper, center this as much as possible, and use my rolling pin to press this down. Then I remove my printing plate, and I have the print, which is, you can see, a mirror image of what I did. When we look closer, you can see how my different etching tools gave me different lines. So my pencil gave me these thick lines, and then my skewer gave me these thinner lines here and on the legs like that. So having a variety of tools can be really fun to experiment and to see what happens.